Hello, everyone, and welcome to the New Jersey Pathways to Career Opportunities collaborative meeting for infrastructure and energy. We're so excited that you all could join us today. This month's theme for all of our collaborative meetings has been experiential learning. We've been lucky enough and honored to have expert speakers on the subject uh, contribute to our meetings, which has been exciting, as well as very interesting pathways to career opportunity partnerships that we have highlighted. My name is Catherine Stargell, and I am Senior Director of Strategy and Partnerships for the New Jersey Council of County Colleges. I am leading the team of magnificent professionals who are engaged in this work and leading the collaboratives, as well as our centers of workforce innovation. We are very excited about the level of engagement we have received from all of you as it relates to this statewide Pathways Initiative. And we are headed toward very important moves. We will have more information to report out to you about the Centers of Workforce Innovation under this collaborative and what they're doing through the rest of the year. But it's very exciting. We are absolutely creating the infrastructure for all of the education sector's partners to come together and be influenced by the voice of industry to ensure that all education and training in the state leads to a pathway toward upward mobility, as well as meeting the needs of our employers throughout the state. I am going to pass the torch now over to the director for the Infrastructure and Energy Collaborative, Stephanie Staub, and she's going to tell us about what we have in store today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you all here today, and I'm really happy to see so many new faces and folks saying hello in the chat. So welcome, and I'm glad that you are all here. As Catherine said, the theme for the month is experiential learning, and we have some really great segments planned for you today. We're going to have a nice conversation with Claire Jacobson. She is the the Vice President of Campus Strategy for Student Opportunity Center. And then we're going to dig into some hands-on experiential learning and the NGIT Solar Car team and some of the work that is done in their Makerspace experiential learning opportunities. And then we're really excited this month. We have organized breakout sessions. So you all will have an opportunity to share with us your reflections on what you're doing with regards to experiential learning, some of the challenges you may have had, and just share your information and get to network with one another. So we're happy to have that segment this month. With that, if you could go to the next slide, just a couple of housekeeping items. We really, really appreciate and want and need your feedback. That QR code will take you right to a very quick feedback survey, but don't worry, if you don't do that now, you have an opportunity in the breakout session. That QR code will come back up and you can click it there. And if you don't get it there, when we send you our thank you for attending the collaborative meeting, it'll be a link in there as well in an email. So you'll have 3 opportunities to give us some feedback, and we hope that you do. Also, we are hoping that you will share with others that you're here today. So social media is the way we get messages out to our colleagues and peers. So please, when you're on social media, whether LinkedIn, Twitter, use that hashtag NJ Pathways and help us spread the word of the work that we are doing. So with that, I also want to introduce or mention that my colleague, I should introduce myself as the Director of Infrastructure and Energy Sector Strategy and Workforce Partnerships. Working with me off the camera is Stephanie Samuel, our program manager, who'll be monitoring the chat. So please do use that to ask questions, provide your reflections or reactions throughout today's program. And as we have time to get to those questions, we will with our speakers. So please do use that. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Claire Jacobson, who's the VP of Campus Strategy at Student Opportunity Center. And she's going to discuss the importance of experiential learning. So a little bit of Claire's background. At SOC, she works on campuses to implement and scale experiential education that helps connect students' curricular experiences to their post-college goals. Previously, Claire served as the Director of National Association of Systems Heads, taking student success to scale, High Impact Practices Network. In this role, she directed NASH's $1.2 million Lumina-funded project to embed and scale promising high impact practices at both the campus and system level, with a focus on closing equity gaps for first-generation students and students of color. So Claire, welcome. Happy to have you here today and have this little chat. So I know that you did prepare a few slides to complement some of the things that we're going to be talking about. So if you need us to move on, just ask us to do that. So as we get started, let's just go with, why is experiential learning so important to industry?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about why it's important to higher education as well as industry, because I think that these are connected concepts, and it's really important that we ensure that the link between the two is always a two-way linkage, that this isn't something that serves industry and this isn't something that serves higher education, that it really needs to be a symbiotic relationship for this to be something that is successful for both and primarily for the student. But a few things, really the big picture. So let's think about the United States. The overall 6-year graduation rate for those seeking bachelor's degrees, this is for your institutions, is about 63%. If you really want to go into the details, I can for you, but it's about 63%. When we break that down, it's closer to 70% for white students and 52% for Black and Latino students, and that's in 6 years. There's also huge discrepancies by type of institution. So for example, in the state in which I'm in right now, but this is fairly standard, there are elite private institutions that graduate close to 100% of their students, and there are also public colleges that graduate around 20% of their students. So we have an equity gap. We have equity problems in this country related to who attends and who graduates from institutions of higher education. And there are many factors for why students don't graduate, and many of these factors are not easily or directly within a university's control. But one factor that is within a university's control is what happens in the curriculum. So for me, the primary reason experiential learning is a critical lever is because of equity. And this is really the same reason it's a critical lever for employers or for industry as well. Second, this is what this slide is showing, there's a preparedness gap. This slide shows a list of skills that employers say are necessary for success. So the percent that employers say students are well prepared in these same skills. So here we see a gap between the extent to which employers say students should have the skills and the extent they have the skills, so a preparedness gap. So if you go to the next slide, we can see this a little bit differently. So this is employers' views versus students' views. So slightly differently, but kind of either way we look at this information, there's a gap between the skills required by their workforce and the skills students are graduating with. So the way I talk about this is this can be two things, and it can be a combo of these two things. Sometimes there's a translation problem. Students may actually have these skills, but may not know how to talk about them. So that's really primarily a translation problem. But there can also be an exposure problem. Students may genuinely not have these skills. They may not have been exposed to them in their courses and co-curricular activities. That's an exposure problem. It's usually some combo of both, but people often have more of a translation or more of an exposure problem. But one way to focus on both the translation and the exposure problem is through experiential learning, and by adding more opportunities into the curriculum that connect the classroom and the career skills and help students articulate their learning. Really, that last piece is critical because, again, they may have had this exposure, but not be able to translate it and then go into interviews and such and not be able to draw on those experiences. So there are many more reasons, but those are kind of three that I would lay out for you this morning of why experiential learning is such a critical lever.
Excellent. Thank you. And really great points. That slide right there says a lot. So what are some strategies that you would suggest that schools could use to develop or expand experiential learning? And I know that high impact practices is one of them. So if you could expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, so thanks for teeing that up for me. So first, I think we should make sure we have sort of similar language or framework. So sort of you may hear the language of experiential learning, of applied learning, connecting theory to practice, hand-picked practices, all of these things sort of depending on your specific circumstances, there may be different languages. So I typically use high impact practices because that's the language you're going to find in the literature. So if you're at a campus or you're someone who just really loves, reading about the research and you go and look this up afterwards, that's what you're going to find. High impact practices, George Koo, AAC&U, these are the terms you may already know or you're going to know shortly. Because this is what the research was done on. So I use this term because it's typically helpful. I also work with a primarily, or at least in large part, academic audience, so the research is important. So high impact practices, but this is really just a subset. If we think of experiential learning as the biggest umbrella, this is a subset. So the research-based practices are these high impact practices, which you see in this list at the left. So you'll probably hear me use that term more often, but again, you can kind of in your mind sub out whichever your first term is. But what we do always need to be considering is that these are practices that are done when done well and done with a specific set of criteria have research-backed impact on students. All experiences don't have this impact. All sort of, experiential or hands-on learning doesn't have the research-backed learning effects. So sort of whatever language you want to use, what's really most important is the high quality and the criteria around it. So that aside, I think a few things we need to think about in terms of strategy is that the students most at risk for graduating are typically the ones who are the least likely to do optional. So for those students, college will be what happens in the classroom. So we really need to think about those connections in the classroom. Third, we need to draw better connections between the curriculum and the co-curriculum. So I get that seems to directly contradict my previous point, but students are different. So for some students, the college will be the classroom. For some students, their most impactful experiences may be what happens outside of the classroom, and we leave a lot of really valuable experiences behind when we don't draw these connections. So both number 2 and number 3 are done most successfully through intentionally designed pathways. I think I may be using pathway a little bit differently than you may be using it all. So, but this is basically ensuring that students have coherently defined educational experiences. So they're not just sort of picking and choosing, doing some cool things and hoping at the end of 4 years they've learned a bunch of stuff. It's, a coherently defined experience with well and thought through learning goals by the institution with, connections to industry, input from industry, et cetera. So fourth, we need to break down the barriers between academics and career education, that there really aren't barriers, that everything you're learning in the classroom, you could be learning about medieval history. You are learning skills that can impact you in your career, that you can take with you, but primarily faculty need some help translating that. They need help helping the students articulate that. So this is where developmental faculty comes in. And too often students just don't see a connection between their studies and a possible career. And this is actually one of the primary reasons that students either stop out, which means leave and come back, or drop out, which means leave and don't come back. And so breaking down these barriers is a truly successful strategy for campuses who want to increase their graduation rates and close their completion gaps, which is pretty much every campus I've ever worked with.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was amazing. So we know that a key component of experiential learning requires on-site supervision or a kind of mentoring teaching relationship with the student participating. Which strategies do you suggest schools use to structure the mentoring aspect of experiential learning?
So what I would say might be a little bit different than mentoring, but would be really thinking about what is it students should be learning in this experience. So again, these experiences have impact when done well and when of high quality. And there are 8 criteria for high impact practices in particular. But that to be effective, these need to be implemented intentionally to assure quality and to promote equitable participation, particularly for diverse students. So I think one thing I would think about is this something that is sort of consistent? Have you defined what you want students to be learning? So perhaps this isn't just particularly about mentoring, but I think often it's just sort of this hope that if they connect with professionals, sort of the magic will happen. But what is that magic? You know, what are the specific things? Do you want them to be working on professional communication, or do you want them to be working on quantitative skills and then back mapping what that looks like? Do you want them to meet once a week? But a few things we do know is that time on task, or spending time, consistent long amounts of time on something. So this isn't like one and done. This isn't, I did something for, you know, I had a week-long experience, long amounts of time. And also relationships with peers and faculty, but let's sub in professionals, are 2 of the 8 qualities. So I would be looking at mentoring programs that had sort of consistent relationship building and scaffolded experiences. So, you know, if I wanted to work on professional communication, I would start breaking that down into the tasks. And a third criteria is public demonstration. So are students able to share this? You know, that's that sort of real world application. Workplace is great for this, you know, are they sharing? Looks like you may have students in the afternoon here. There's public demonstration, right? So how was that experience back scaffolded? They would have had to prepare, they would have had to practice, they would have had to do groups, etc., and then public demonstration. So there you've already got 3 of the 8 qualities for high impact practices. And I'm sure there were more if I took a couple more minutes to think through it.
Right. Awesome. Thank you. So talking about employers, so what do you think some best practices are in connecting experiential learning to curriculum and creating value for the employer? So right, going back to that slide, that I can't get over the slide of what the employers, you know, responses were versus where the students thought that they were, right?
Yeah.
So connecting curriculum, but also bringing that, you know, value to the employer. And then the next question I think ties into is, what recommendations do you have for education partners regarding employer engagement, right? So how do we connect it? And then how do we get more of them involved?
Yeah, so if we go to slide 4, so I think the 1 is explicitly drawing connections. The next is pathways, and the third is professional development for faculty and staff. So these 2 slides show ways to explicitly draw connections. So here is, this is Georgia State. They have specifically shown career competencies. If we move ahead, these both happen to be from Georgia. This is Georgia College. This is a pathway. Can you go on more? Yeah. So this is what I mean by a pathway. They have organized their students, they call it a journey, their students' journey, so that it isn't happenstance. You can't maybe get these experiences. You have to get them to graduate. So in the first year, 3 are mandatory, then there are 2 that are voluntary, or you choose between. So you graduate with 5 of these experiential learning opportunities. So this is, you know, drawing connections, pathways, but to do all of this work, it's professional development for faculty and staff. And then the other recommendations. So I would say partnering with the faculty. So sometimes employers will approach this as kind of an off the shelf. You know, they have something that they want, they may have already kind of formed it in their mind, and then they go to the campus or the faculty with it. Or maybe it's something they've been doing, you know, but whatever, it's kind of a pre-formed, already cooked, you know, I would say go with the ingredients, really, truly a partnership, because the faculty understand the learning, they understand the pedagogy, they understand the scaffolding. You understand, you know, the workplace, you understand where some of those gaps in that slide. Together, you can create an experience that connects those. So both people really need to be interested in that connection. So that truly is one thing, but too often I see this sort of like, well, we just want to plop this in a course and faculty get their backs up, and then it's just not successful from the get-go. So, you know, I think there's a lot of relationship building that needs to happen, and trust. There's often sometimes some distrust. So then I would truly find out from the faculty what learning outcomes are they already teaching in their course. You know, some of this language is going to be very foreign to you, and some of your language is going to be very foreign to them. But at the end of the day, you can break this down. It's just, you know, it's just different words. Right. What is it they're hoping students learn in their course, and then map that to something that you know. So maybe quantitative reasoning isn't the right course. This isn't the right match for you, but professional communication can be. So, you know, have a real great deep conversation with the professor about what they want students to walk away with from this course, and then think about how you can build this experience around those outcomes. Now you've got the outcomes. Now you've already, you're halfway through to this mentoring or whatever it is experience, right? It all starts with that what is the learning we want to take from here? How do we build this experience? So I think very often there isn't that conversation. If you asked someone supervising an internship, what is the professor's learning outcomes? They would just be like, and similarly, if you asked a faculty member, what are the professional outcomes this employer is most interested in, they would just but there's so much overlap there. So, and then really, really important, think about scaffolding opportunities. So this isn't about junior year. This isn't about senior year. This is about early and often. So how do you work with students early in their career? And I'll be honest with you, this is a heavier lift. Getting students when they're less, you're going to get more of that disconnect in those first two slides, but it will pay off. So, so basically, how can that skill development be scaffolded earlier in their professional development? So let's say you worked with a student freshman year on like a small project, then sophomore year they had an externship, junior year they've done an internship for you. The way in which this pays off is you certainly know if this is an employee that's a good fit, both directions. So we all know that, that stat about how expensive it is to hire and retain employees. Well, by the time you've had 3 touch points and growing, length of engagement with someone, if that's someone who's a good fit and they know if it's a good fit for you. So yes, it absolutely is a heavier lift to work with students early in their career, but I do truly think it pays off. And I'm going to circle back to where I began. This is an equity issue because the students, you're not prepared for a junior year internship if you haven't had exposure to these skills early on. So the way we have a more diverse and a more equitable workforce is we help students with these skills earlier on. So one thing industry can do is participate in these experiences early on, reach out to faculty, work with faculty through things like project-based learning, which is a big part of what we do, which is very low lift on both ends, but helps scaffold these skills for the students. So they're then ready for junior year. So they're then ready to be hired when they graduate. So tying it back, I think that would be my major thing, early and often, for, to help close these equity gaps.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Claire. We really appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
There's Claire's contact information. And just so everyone knows, we will send you the slide deck. So you'll get those slides, that information that she shared with us. That data was really incredible. Please do connect with her. Experiential learning really is the intersection of knowledge obtained through the curriculum and that real world application. So your points were really, just spot on. So thank you. And that brings us to our next segment, right? So we're going to talk about doing exactly what Claire mentioned. So our Pathways to Career Opportunities segment, we're going to welcome the Newark College of Engineering at NGIT's Solar Car team. So we're going to talk today with a few representatives from NGIT. So we have with us Professor Daniel Brateris. He's the Director of Experiential Learning. We've got Justin Soriano, the manager of NGIT's Makerspace, which is an incredible area where the Solar Car team meets. And then the stars of the segment are some representatives from the Solar Car team. So we've got Mano Guzrati, who is the engineering lead. Welcome. And Danny Balseca, who's the electrical lead. So welcome, Danny. Again, I want to remind everybody, please put your questions in the chat and we can get to them when we're done having our own little chat. So NGI team, please feel free to add any links that you would like to in the chat about the team so that those listening can follow you and learn more about you. I know that you have some interesting things going on. So first, Professor Dan, can you give us just a quick overview? I know that NGIT has a lot of different experiential learning opportunities besides the Solar Car team. So can you just give us a quick, minute overview of the different types of experiential learning programs and how you connect them to curriculum and programs of study?
Sure, absolutely. Very excited to be here. So NGIT is primarily an engineering school, but we have, the full suite of STEM study as well. And what we've been doing over the last several years is trying to really focus on improving the hands-on curriculum that is within our structured coursework, and then adding additional learning experiences that could be required or could be, voluntary by the students. So one of those is the things like our student teams, which you'll hear from our solar car. We have several teams that focus in pretty much every discipline. So these are extracurricular activities that require the students to begin a project and see it to completion. So most of them are design and build type projects. So the students have to manage a budget, manage a project, communicate it to people, and then typically go compete somewhere against other universities doing similar projects. And then we are starting to really focus on cooperative education and longer format internships. So we're starting to adopt a model that is much more like the model that you may know from like Drexel or other universities that have a 5-year model where students are required to embark on at least one, but typically 2, 7 to 9 month long internships where they go and work full time for, an engineering or similar type company. And then the other things that we're doing, and I'm sure you'll hear from Justin about this, but we are trying to get our students into practical hands-on places as early as possible when they arrive here. So when they come as freshmen, we want to get them hands-on skills. That could be simple things like, participating in a woodshop class or something like that. But we want to get them learning to build, because most things engineers do end up in the real world. They end up getting built and produced. And we want to make sure that our students have an idea of what happens and also have some skills in fabrication and prototyping. So we get them into our shop facilities as early as possible so that as they continue on, professors can do things like, instead of assigning a final exam, they can assign a final project where you have to produce something as part of that class. So that's just a few of the things that we're doing. But I think those are some of the most impactful because, engineers build real things, and the best thing to do is to get people to build things.
And everything you just described really ties back to what Claire talked about earlier, which is this terrific, right? So this is it being, shown in practice. So Justin, can you talk a little bit about the Makerspace and all that it has to offer to prepare students for the workforce?
Sure, yeah. So our Makerspace on campus is our fabrication facility for all NJIT students, faculty, and staff. And we're also branching out into continued workforce education too. And just to really quickly define a makerspace, it is a fabrication facility. So it's where students come to actually get their hands dirty on campus and actually make something. So for some of those capstone projects that Professor Pateras had mentioned, our club teams that are going to speak next, they're fabricating all of those projects at our makerspace and using our manufacturing equipment. So what our makerspace does is we train our students, our members, on every piece of machinery that we have to offer, or at least that's the goal. And by training them, so not only are we introducing them to that manufacturing solution so that they can use it safely and effectively, but also we're teaching them some design for manufacturability concepts as well. So we're really tying the theory that they're learning in their classes to the practical application. Again, like Professor Pateras had said, if you can't actually make that physical solution to a problem, you can't actually solve that problem. So when we teach design for manufacturability, we're actually looking at the machine we're educating on, and we're saying, okay, these are the things that this machine can do. This is what it cannot do. This is how to properly design for this machine so that you're effective, you're an effective manufacturer and problem solver. And then, to tie into what we spoke about before, that makes for a very effective graduate once they leave NJIT. So when they're able to actually take those skills that they learned in our makerspace, they're immediately ready to jump in, on the floor of their new positions. They can immediately get their hands dirty. They can prototype. They know what machines do what. They become very effective engineers in that way. And then beyond that, we mentioned this before, makerspaces and just fabrication in general really breeds self-efficacy and self-competency. So when you get your hands dirty and you actually complete a task, when you really do it yourself and you overcome all the obstacles along the way, that really builds you up. It builds the student up. And when they feel competent and they feel secure and confident, they really do great things when they leave the
That's
school.
excellent. Excellent. And I think the solar car team is a perfect example of that. So thank you. So
Yeah.
Mano and Danny, this is Catherine, if you could go to the next slide just to show the team and the car. So with renewable energy and electric vehicles, being a very popular topic right now, although this is an electric vehicle, solar powered car, and the challenges that go with coordinating a team. So unfortunately, we were supposed to have the team president with us, who was called away this morning, so he's not able to be here. Please let him know that we appreciate all that he does on the team. But Danny, if you could, as the electric lead, maybe just give us a little bit of a breakdown. I know that it's an interdisciplinary team, right? So it's a project-based learning community, and you're broken down into a development team and an operations team. Can you describe how industry and employers, interface with each of those teams, each of those, sections of your team?
Sure, of course. It's a pleasure to meet all of you guys. Can you guys hear me fine?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. So in the past, the way we've interfaced with employers is that we've usually had employers as sponsors, so they would help sponsor and fund our car, but they've also served as a means to sort of mentor us and guide us in the right direction. Because starting a project and designing it and doing something novel as a solar car is definitely a great hurdle to overcome for undergraduate students. And so they've also been our mentors in the past, and they've helped us with, like where to take certain design objectives, and how to run a club like this, because a club like this is a lot different than other clubs in the school, in terms of that there's a lot of development, but there's also a lot of operational parts of the club.
Sure. Excellent. Thank you. And Mano, welcome. I know that you mentioned when we spoke that you were a graduate of Essex County Community College. So nice to see that you made that transition from community college to NGIT, that pathway. Can you give us some insight regarding the design, build, and competition process, and how those two sides of the team, the development and operations, kind of integrate?
Hi, everyone. So yeah, in a broad sense, the solar car team functions on the design, build, and compete, like DBC framework, where first we have to conceptualize a car, and then gather all the design parameters, the performance parameters that we want to optimize for our next build, and then also, as Justin mentioned earlier, design for manufacturability is one of our biggest goals in that phase, and then we move on to the build phase, where we have to understand all the manufacturing process, and really, across the board, people from all majors learn how to build stuff and learn skills in terms of manufacturing. And for the solar car team in particular, the design cycles are every 2 years. So it's like you learn how to build a product from its inception to completion in like a deadline kind of a framework, where you constantly have to evolve based on your cost analysis and project management in that sense. And then finally we build all this stuff to compete. So we have to prepare for racing, and also build our car up to regulations, which has a lot of constraints involved. So that's like a real world engineering simulation, where you're constantly working with constraints, making decisions that affect your team and your work. And also there are very strict safety standards for a race like this, because of course you're putting a human inside the car, and then who's going to drive. So we also have to take care of that.
Right. Excellent. So this is for both you, Mano, and Danny. I know the 22 American Solar Challenge is coming up in July, I believe. Right. So, and that event is organized by the Inventors Education Foundation. I love the fact that you guys talked about, and we talked about this, offline, that you learn to design for manufacturability. Right. So that is such an important aspect of understanding what you're doing needs to be able to be carried out and manufactured. Right. So that's amazing. But the competition, coming up in July, it's promoting educational excellence and celebrating engineering creativity through multidisciplined experiential learning opportunities. What is your team's biggest challenge as you're preparing for that competition?
So I would say in the past, the biggest challenge recently has been navigating the pandemic. So we've decided to compete in 2023 because we're
Okay.
developing a generation 2 car currently, and we want to go into the race knowing that we have a good chance of placing in a favorable position. So that's why I would say, yeah, the biggest challenge is to keep the team morale up through the pandemic, because everything turned online, and then the
Absolutely.
hands-on part was kind of missing. So we're just phasing it back in gradually, and with the Makerspace and partnering with Dan, and so yeah, we're trying to build the whole collaborative and manufacturing part of the team back up and build up the
Absolutely.
energy.
Well, we will be following you. We really appreciate you all taking time, especially Mano and Danny, as students. I know how busy this time of year is.
Yeah.
So to take some time from your morning, we really appreciate it. Again, we'll be sharing your information in our follow-up. Thank yous to all of our participants. Look forward to watching you in 2023, and good luck.
Thank you.
Now we're going to finish
Thank
with our breakout sessions, where you all will have an opportunity to share your experiences and do some networking. So just a couple of items to remember. Once they're opened, you're automatically going to go into a breakout room. You're going to click breakout rooms in your meeting controls, and when prompted, just click join meeting. Once you're there, please put your name and title in the chat, and then you can raise your hand to respond to the questions that are being presented. I want to thank you all for joining us this morning, and I hope you enjoy the breakout rooms, and we look forward to seeing you again next month.
Technology and oh yeah, and I've been at the position for about 3 or 4 years now. I'm also a graduate of NJIT as well.
Outstanding. Thank you, Justin. Dr. Mcnamara.
Hi, my name is Anne-Marie Mcnamara. I am a supervisor of career and technical education for Union County Vocational Technical Schools. So it's a high school, and we run 39 programs, CTE programs here. So thank you for having me. I think I'm only high school person here. I looked at your whole list.
That's okay. You'll contribute much to the conversation. So thank you. Roberta.
Hi, I'm Roberta Harvey. I'm Vice President for Academic Affairs at Rowan University. Currently working very closely with Rochelle Hendricks here at Rowan on a lot of things in the same space here with the Alliance, with our community college consortium, and so and working on the project of the collaboratives, building out the pathway, and of late, I am now starting a focus on experiential learning across the university. My claim to fame, though, today is that Dan Berteris is a Rowan alum, and he was in my class as a sophomore in the clinic class. So I recognize this model, and I was so excited to see him. And we want to chat further about it. But this is really, really excellent. I think it's a gold standard for experiential learning because of just kind of the really comprehensive the spectrum of experiential learning, from project management to the the engineering knowledge, communication, teamwork, just really, really great stuff.
Thank you. That was a great example of a practical experience and real world experience. So thank you for sharing that. June.
Good morning, everybody. My name is June Smith. I am the project manager for workforce initiatives at the Newark Alliance, and we're currently working on the Prologis Career Workforce Initiatives project, which NJ Pathways and a bunch of other employers are partners in this effort. And one of the things that we're very interested in is understanding that while we are trying to place people in the transportation, distribution, and logistics space, we also recognize that there are students or folks that are may be out of school that are looking for opportunities in terms of college or in because they're not college ready or interested, are looking for other opportunities in the career workforce space. And so we're very interested in just kind of learning and diving a little bit more into this experiential learning. Thank you.
Thank you, June. James.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jim Stover. I'm the training director at the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 269 in Trenton. I've been doing this about 10 years now. And I guess apprenticeships are the original experiential learning pathway. So I hope I can add something to the discussion.
Thank you. David?
David Zimmer. I'm the executive director of the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank, which is a state authority that partners with both the DEP and the DOT to finance construction projects. We fund somewhere between $600 million worth of construction projects every single year.
And Gloria?
Hi, Gloria Vrabel, and I apologize. I'm fighting a sinus infection, so my participation will be limited today, but I'm the senior director here at New Jersey Transit, and I work closely with our outreach unit, and I also oversee the robust internship program we have here at New Jersey Transit.
Thank you, Gloria. And we were fortunate enough to have a presentation by New Jersey Transit around their internship program during we're doing the Manufacturing and Supply Chain Collaborative recently. Bill, I know you introduced yourself. Could I ask you to introduce yourself one more time just so we capture it on our recording?
Oh, sure. Bill Healy, Special Advisor to the President, New Jersey Alliance for Action Infrastructure Advocacy organization. Been around for about 50 years. I've only been with the Alliance for about 16 months. Glad to be here. Previously, I worked in workforce development in the pharmaceutical industry.
Thank you again. Thank you all, everyone, for introducing yourselves. So let's just kind of jump in, and you heard some of the discussion around experiential learning and some examples with the NJIT's experiential learning program. What are some of your questions or some of your own insights around experiential learning? I think James kind of touched on it, apprenticeship kind of being the precursor to what we now call experiential learning, and maybe James, maybe you'd like to touch on a little bit around that as it relates to the apprenticeship model.
Sure. I'll give you a little background. I got my Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering at Lehigh University back in the 80s, and that did not exist. I mean, we did not do hands-on projects. We didn't do labs. Computer labs was pretty much it. So to see that academia is looking at a more hands-on approach, and we're actually looking at building things we design, I think that's great, because as a guy who's worked out in the electrical field for 30 some years, you can't count the number of times that an engineer sends you down something that just cannot be built. And they don't realize why it can't be built, because they didn't have, that was not part of your education. And I sympathize, because I was there too. So to see this new focus on experiential learning and actually understanding how to build what you design, or at least include that in the criteria, is huge. I think it's going to make everyone more valuable.
Thank you. And agreed. I think everyone would agree to that. Others, are there questions with you all? I'm sorry.
I'd love to follow up on that.
Yes,
I wanted to amplify that James's comment about apprenticeships and that being kind of the original experiential learning, and among the important points about that, I think, is the equity element. There are many students who, because of their aptitudes, because of what they're exposed to, and also because of their economic situation, may start with that kind of thing that we're now thinking of apprenticeships and other things that are not called apprenticeships as work to learn opportunities, so that we look at it and say, this is the beginning of this person's learning. How do we make that into a continuum into higher education? So I mentioned that I taught Van Berteris as a sophomore. So my faculty position is in experiential engineering education here at Rowan. I'm not an engineer. I taught writing, so that's why I thought building in the teamwork and communication piece is so critical. But one of the things we noticed about our engineering program, we have that design, build, test, project-based learning starts in the freshman year. And it progresses. The freshman year is kind of structured. The sophomore clinic was an open-ended project that the faculty designed, but the students had to do. And then junior, senior is industry sponsored, faculty sponsored projects that are real. But it's all very hands-on from the start. And what we found is we had a lot of students who didn't necessarily succeed in a traditional classroom environment, but we're very comfortable with, this kind of much more applied, working with their hands. We call it hands-on, minds-on. And even the writing went better for them. They struggled in their traditional literature-based Comp 1 class. We got them into our second semester composition course, which was embedded in the design course. And that made so much more sense to them. It was more of technical writing. It was more, why do I have to understand narrative? Well, because you need to explain your methods, and things like that. So I'm deeply interested in this. And I think the apprenticeship model has an extremely important role in that, that we look at this as the person who's not maybe thinking I'm going to go to college starts out here. And if the more that we recognize that and become intentional about that pathway, the better. And there was a colleague of mine who was logged in here briefly, and I think he had to step off, but he's our apprenticeship person at Rowan, and he and I are working closely on building this pathway. So this is a super great conversation. I know I've talked a lot. I was hoping to get Justin to talk about the makerspace concept, and because I'm not familiar with the term makerspace in engineering. It comes out, but I thought, what a great way to highlight the creativity.
Yeah, sure. So what a makerspace is, I guess, I asked this question actually at a lot of our tours, what is a makerspace? And most times the answer I get is a space where you make things. And to be honest, that's not wrong. That is what's happening here. So I would say the older model of makerspaces is it's a bunch of donated power tools, donated machinery, and it's all in the effort of, making prototypes. So like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the show Mythbusters, the factory or floor that they're in for most of the show. That's kind of like a makerspace in a sense. It's very like, whereas a factory would be like very, very directed at one purpose, manufacturing one item or like a small range of items, and everything's very well not maintained, but everything is very directed at that. A makerspace is more open to every type of endeavor, every type of pursuit where you are physically making an item. So there's all different types of machinery at our space. So we actually just built a new facility that houses our safer equipment, as we like to call it. So 3D printing in that facility, a lot of 3D printers, also laser cutters and engravers. And that's all really safe equipment to use to rapidly prototype something. And so now that older model of makerspaces, that's a lot of like tinkerers, not necessarily engineers, what have you. Obviously our makerspace is academic and focused on the, it's focused on the engineering students at NJIT, but it's also open to everybody, especially our design students are also really well using our makerspace. But it's focused on engineering our makerspace. So what that means is we are trying to directly connect some of the theory that students are learning in their classes with actually manufacturing. Manufacturing is the complement to engineering, as I see it. Engineers are, doing the theoretical and modeling work to make these solutions, let's say, to make them digital in the first step. And then the next piece is to manufacture them, make them into reality. And that's kind of where we're trying to bridge the gap specifically with our makerspaces. I can't speak to other schools' makerspaces, but I know that we are trying to really connect those dots, because for some reason, manufacturing is like this world's best kept secret. We don't know why. but nobody knows how anything is made. And then we're trying to impart that knowledge in our students so they can, again, connect those dots and start to say, oh, I'm going from here to there. These are the tools I need because I've seen those tools, I've used those tools. That was a really long-winded answer. I hope that touched on the question.
That was great. Thanks.
Yeah.
June, I see your hand.
Yeah, no, I was going to just say to Justin, thank you so much for that. I mean, I've done some stuff in entrepreneurship, business development world. So that was the stuff that I did before I came into workforce development stuff. But I want to say that the other thing that I think is really interesting about Makerspaces is just the fact that you're bringing together not just engineers, but you're bringing together artists and entrepreneurs and innovators and inventors. And I think that's the sweet, secret sauce of all of this. So just wanted to mention that.
Absolutely. Thank you for filling that in. I like barely scratched the surface, and you actually brought up two great pieces there, which is, like you said, the artists, Makerspaces, there's a lot of art happening here. It's not just like I need to build this bridge to do a competition, what have you. A lot of students come in and they 3D print characters they've seen in movies, TV, just to kind of get a taste of the whole process, and also have something that's artistic that they can hold and hang on to. And then you brought up another great point, which is entrepreneurship. We're really heavily advocating for that. We're trying to build more bridges with the incubator that we have on campus. We've actually had some crossover success with them, getting a couple students to use the Makerspace fabrication equipment to build their businesses, build their brand. We had one student who prototyped a number of components at our Makerspace, and then they were able to get angel investors to actually invest in their company. And they went from there after graduation. So entrepreneurship is another huge piece of what we do and what we support here at the space.
Thank you, Justin. So a question for the group. What types of barriers has anyone experienced in trying to really get an experiential learning program going? I know this probably mostly applies to those schools. Have you all experienced any barriers in trying to really establish or expand an experiential learning?
Hi, so we have 39 programs in our high school. Obviously, most of the people are under 18. That's like one kind of big barrier for us. It's hard to, I would say we do a watered down version. And I know that sounds kind of negative, but I mean in a positive way, where I know one of you said that you start grade 9, do this. I'm sorry, freshman year, do this, sophomore year, do that, junior year, out in the field. Same, we do the same thing. We're, in a high school way, where the English teacher is working with the Makerspace teacher, things like that. But this age requirement for hazardous places like a manufacturing situation, that's one of our barriers. I definitely have enough sites. I have over 125 sites in our county and growing. It's just the OSHA is no problem. We'll get our kids OSHA. It's just the age, I would say, is one kind of big barrier.
Thank you, Dr. McNamara. Others experience roadblocks or challenges around experiential learning?
Yeah, I think getting senior faculty on board, at least at a university, is a tough one. Not to, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. I think that some senior faculty are set in their ways, and they're convinced that the content that they're teaching, the theoretical topics they're teaching are still valid in industry and still valid in the practical world. But unfortunately, times do change, and manufacturing and engineering even becomes a different process as time moves forward. I think changing their minds and getting them to see the benefits of having a makerspace and doing hands-on learning and fabrication related to their class. That's probably been the biggest hurdle, I would say, for us, getting professors and departments to incorporate the makerspace in their teaching. However, they are coming around, so it's trending positively.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's great to hear.
We have that too. We have that too, a section of content experts versus collaborative experts. I think it's just kind of personalities, humans.
Excellent. Dr. McNamara, do you have any examples, any success stories of your experiential learning? We know Justin and his team has kind of presented some of their successes, but are there any other successes?
We have a lot. I mean, too many to count, right? We have, I have about 180 students out in the world with about 125 sites. Our high school is about 2,300 students, 600 seniors. So it's about 20% are out in the world. Every student is exposed to some type of experiential learning, whether it's a master class from a costume designer in our performing arts school, or if it's we have a criminal justice program here. We have a forensic biologist that comes in and does 10 classes. So it's experience, in a different way. Now out in the field, those are for our sophomores. One thing that kind of sticks out that I would say maybe separates high school versus the college is we have our CTSOs, right? Our career and technical student organizations. Maybe people in this panel remember hearing DECA or FBLA or TSA. So we just had our TSA or Skills USA if you were a CTE graduate yourself. So we have a lot of, winners. FBLA is like, 200 state competition winners. So I would say that would be a success. And that's because the FBLA curriculum is kind of infused into our information technology. Every class, every student on our campus has a portfolio. So we're trying to, infuse our career readiness and our competencies from grade 9. Like this is what's happening, but having that collaborative effort where the English, math, science teacher goes to the makerspace to use the laser, it's like, that's like baby steps, we're getting there. Even our medical terminology teacher, he just is doing med-term. That's what's happening, so kind of tunnel vision, but lots of success, I would say.
Thank you. That was a wonderful overview and I think one of the things that you said and Justin said as well, or at least alluded to, is the fact that it's important to be informed, the faculty to be informed by the industry itself, whatever that industry sector entails, because that Justin pointed out the fact that things change, technology moves so fast, and especially in the manufacturing space, but in all sectors, it really doesn't. Healthcare doesn't really matter. So that I think both of you all kind of pointed out, or at least on a higher level, the fact that connectivity, being informed by industry, is very important, which is a very critical component of the Pathways Initiative, is to make sure that all of our community colleges are being informed and our centers are being informed by the industry that they represent. So thank you for that. We have a couple of minutes before we close out, but I wanted to ask, are there any other pressing questions or ideas that anyone in the group would like to share that would be wonderful to share amongst our group? There's a lot of best practices and concepts that are being implemented or rendered by our community-based organizations, our educational ecosystem partners, even some of our employers and our unions. So any last suggestions or best practices that anyone would like to share with everyone?
I'm just curious as to what kind of feedback people participating in this breakout room are getting from teachers at the K-8 level, and just making it aware. And I say that the Alliance made a presentation at the NJEA convention last year, specifically to talk about the apprentice programs of our member unions, and also to talk about the pathways within our member utilities, and it was very, very well received.
So obviously our 8th graders come in, to tour our facility. And if you look at the statistics for CTE schools, for every 1 student who is entered, 3 are turned away. So that's how competitive, at least in Union County, but in New Jersey, they do that. And I know in my own experience, I'm an empty nester, both my kids attend college, and all of my children and their friends, they're hands-on. That's how they learn the best, is hands-on. And I witness it every day on my own job. So I would think it's well received in K-8. In my scope of Central Jersey scope, I would say it's completely ready to go,
Thank you.
And thank you for that question, Bill. That was a great question. And that's important that we're able to connect all these dots. I'd be curious if you would be interested in sharing that presentation with us so that we could share with the entire group. I think it would be helpful to everyone because there's a lot of things happening in a lot of different spaces, and oftentimes individuals are not aware of some of these initiatives. So I appreciate everyone that's here today and sharing your insights as well as information about the program.
I'd be happy to share that with the group. It was done in person last November 4th, and then the next day yours truly reprised it online. In both cases, we were paired with member representatives of the Alliance for Action. One case was a young woman engineer for New Jersey American Water Company. And then I was paired with a former school superintendent who at one time had been an architect, and when he retired as a school superintendent, went back to being an architect and is now involved in business development for one of the Alliance's engineering firms. But again, very well received. I'd be happy to share both presentations with the group.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
That's wonderful. So as we close out, I'd like to encourage everyone, if you're not currently signed up to participate with the Pathways Initiative, you can scan your code. You can just hold your phone if you have a smartphone. You can scan that. We certainly encourage you to stay connected with us. Our centers for workforce innovation are working rapidly to implement their work plans around this Pathways Initiative, and everyone here play a key role in helping us move that initiative forward. So again, thank you for being here. This will work because of the informed intelligence that everyone is bringing to this discussion and to our collaborative meetings. We encourage you to stay connected with us and share information about the initiative. There are also some of our social media postings, so please share on if you're in the social media space. Our upcoming collaboratives will, we don't have the dates for the upcoming collaboratives, but the next collaborative meeting will be May 4th, which will be manufacturing and supply chain. So I invite those of you who may be interested in that collaborative, please join us. You should receive a link for that to register for that collaborative meeting within the next week or so. So again, thank you all for being here. I'll put, if you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to any of us. I'm going to put my information in the chat. You're more than welcome to contact me, and I'll forward it to my colleagues if it's something that doesn't relate to me specifically. But thank you all again. We look forward to seeing everyone next month. And this was a wonderful discussion. I wish we had more time, but thank you for your time today.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us in the breakout session. We really just want to give an opportunity for you all to speak with each other and share your experiences with any experiential learning programs that you might offer or have participated. How about let's start with introductions. Danny, we all know you because you just gave a phenomenal presentation. Thank you so much for that. That car looks exciting. I wonder if it goes as fast as I drive on the road. I'm not sure.
Probably not, no.
Probably not. Jake, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Jake Farbman. I'm the Executive Director of the New Jersey Center for Student Success here at the Council of County Colleges. We're one of 17 states that have a centralized resource hub for the community colleges to help advance innovation and support colleges to improve student success.
Awesome. Thank you, Jake. Todd?
Hi, how you doing, everybody? Todd
Hello.
Menadier. I work for Solar Landscape as the Director of Workforce Development. I actually got my master's at NJIT in Power Systems Engineering, and definitely got some experiential learning through that, so I appreciate it. We're currently running workforce development training programs across the state throughout a bunch of nonprofits and local community organizations, but also going into schools, both tech schools and comprehensive high schools, as well as hopefully getting into some of the community colleges as well to try to get some folks interested in the industry.
That's awesome. I was just going to say, Todd, we have to connect. Latoya?
Hello, my name is Latoya Wilson. I am a consultant for WCRC. One of my partners is a renewable energy company called Aris, where I'll be working with them to create a STEM curriculum for K-12 students. So I'm excited about it.
Excellent. That sounds like some of the stuff we're doing in the center. Well, look, I guess I have to connect with everybody. Francisco.
Hi, Catherine. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you.
I'm Frank Galindo, Lincoln Technical Institute. Been with the company for 20 years. I'm their AVP of Public Relations and Stakeholder Engagement. I'm also an alumnus of NJIT. I got my bachelor's degree in '99 from the School of Management. So it's exciting to see what the school has been doing, the progress they've been making. So great job, Danny and team.
Thank you. It's nice to meet a fellow alumni.
Yep.
How exciting. We met with Lincoln Tech. Look, time is flying. Probably 2 months.
Right.
Probably
It's
2 months
crazy.
ago. We'll have
Yeah.
to double back. We'll have to double back.
Absolutely, Catherine.
Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Pena. I'm with the Jewish Renaissance Foundation. I'm the program coordinator for the Perth Amboy Alliance for Community program, also the JRF Training and Testing Center. We work with the neighborhood in Perth Amboy and the surrounding areas to provide trainings and different recreational programs.
Gotcha. Very nice. See, it's nice from our perspective. We hope you feel it's nice from your perspective to have a place, you know, a monthly meeting, just the infrastructure where we can all come together. Certainly, we think it'll make, you know, all of us better. So keeping with our theme on experiential learning, I have a few questions. The first, does your organization have an experiential learning best practice that you want to share?
I can jump in and say from our end, we do not, Catherine. It's something that we've been talking about for years, trying to figure out what the best format and structure would be to ensure that we are giving incoming students the proper credit for that experiential learning that they have, while also maintaining our standards of accreditation. Obviously, right, we're accredited by ACCSC, an accrediting body, and then we have other state agencies that license us. So we've been trying to figure out what the balance was to be able to accomplish that. So for me, it's great to be here and hopefully learn from other members in this room and just from the collaboratives as a whole, as you mentioned before, Catherine, to be able to meet every month is fantastic because it helps give us information that's going to benefit our students in the long run. So unfortunately, we do not have that, but I'd love to hear what other folks do as well. It's kind of help us along in our progress.
Thank you, Frank. You are not alone. Some community colleges have, well-established experiential learning opportunity and programs. Some don't. I've been meeting with four-year colleges, and NJIT is one. There's actually an experiential learning course. Actually, there are two established courses and then like an independent study. It's incredible. It is very structured. In fact, I'm using the syllabus and I'll send it to you, Frank. I'm using the syllabus this summer with my son because he ought to, do an organizational chart for wherever he's going to work this summer. He ought to, understand what, the principles are, the mission of the company. There's so many things. Of course, there's, a paper, the employer is engaged. through a platform called Handshake, where the employer gives an evaluation that goes toward the course, right? The employer might have some other evaluation process for the students. It's just amazing. It's incredible. Does anyone else have any best practices to share? No. So what have been the roadblocks that you've encountered, right? And either developing the strategy for including or embedding experiential learning in your curriculum and programs, or actually implementing those programs? Are we all at the beginning stages?
Yeah, to get evaluating what exactly that qualifies towards, for us, as I mentioned, is tough to figure out, because you don't want to be in violation, and make sure that the credits and the hours count, for lack of a better term. So yeah, for us, Catherine, it's that. How do you evaluate that, incorporate that?
Right.
Yeah, can I just add one thing to that too?
Sure.
Yeah, so coming from the solar industry, right? Like, we're trying to train folks to get out and get into the workforce like immediately, right? With the growth that we're experiencing. And so having some sort of like recognized certification is kind of tricky, because right now there's only one recognized certification for the solar industry, and it really doesn't, it's very rigorous, and it doesn't really help you do the install side of the work. It's a lot more technical than you need to know. Like, the skill set for an installer is very minimal. And so finding a way we created our own certification that we just call solar landscape certification, but like, it's not industry recognized. So that's a hurdle that we're currently experiencing right now.
What is the organization that sponsors the one credential, industry value credential, that does exist?
It's called NABCEP, the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners.
Have you thought about submitting your credential or your program?
Well, they're pretty well established, and there's states that actually require people to have that NABCEP certification in order to do the work. So like here in New Jersey, you have to have at least one electrical contractor that oversees everything from the electrical side. In other states, they do that for the install side as well, where there's no requirement here. So there's not really, you don't really even need our certification per se, but it is helpful if you want to go and get into the workforce with somebody else besides like our own company. So how do we make sure that they're, I don't know, just more aware of the skills and training that's necessary? We are working with other programs to try to develop an apprenticeship, which we think will be more beneficial.
Nice. Yes, a U.S. registered apprenticeship. That would be amazing. And I think what you'll see if you all do go through that very rigorous process, right, is that other states will pick up on that and may tweak your model to create, similar apprenticeships, registered apprenticeships for their states. I know that some of the centers of workforce innovation are absolutely capitalizing on, particularly in renewable energy, capitalizing on existing U.S. registered apprenticeships. They're probably going to tweak it because you get to tweak them up to 20%. And then there's an expedited approval process. But then your state has, a U.S. registered apprenticeship to work upon. And then of course the centers are going to go a step further and have the requirements, the RTI, the instruction, evaluated for credit, so that that program, that credential really gets baked into the curriculum. What about engaging, and Todd, I believe you're the employer and the trainer, right? But what about for others, engaging employers in your experiential learning opportunity efforts? We hear that a lot, that it's just difficult to get employers committed for the long term. Have any of you all experienced that? Maybe you've not gotten that far. No, okay. I know that even with this Pathways initiative, the community colleges partnered with the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, the largest, employer association in the state. They say the nation. I'm going to believe them, but they just having access to their membership with regards to the 4 industry sectors that are the focal points for this Pathways initiative has been incredibly helpful, because we don't have to go recreate the wheel and really develop, right, those channels to employers. So whenever we talk in the centers about developing experiential learning programs, we want them all connected to the local county chambers, as well as NJBIA and other associations, so that we, have a pipeline straight to the employers. I do have another question. And this probably is a ripe question for Danny. Do you have any experiential learning success story, positive outcomes, something other than what you shared during your presentation?
So would that be in regards to, like, let's say, like employment opportunities, or? So none as of yet. And a big part of that has been the pandemic. So, previously in the past, the way the solar car team worked is that it was a lot more hands-on. So during it, I guess I'd say the peak of solar cars operations, we've actually met, and they've met with industry professionals, and they've met with companies like Tektronix and PSE&G, and they've had to give talks, and it was a lot of connections going on there. But since the pandemic, not a lot of that has happened. But I'd say the closest thing to a recent success story would be that this year, or every year, the solar car team, and as well as the Baja team, which is another experiential learning team from NJIT. Every year they go to the auto show, in the New York City Auto Show in the Javits Center, which is the pictures you guys have seen in the slides. And so I guess I'd say something good that came out of that, besides exposing the public to our work, and getting people interested in renewable energy, and these types of technologies. But what I would say is a good result of that was actually getting a contact information from a worker from PSE&G who was interested in sponsoring us. And so he gave us his card, and he told us if we ever needed anything, he'd be happy to connect. So that was, I'd say, a good experience, a good result from NJIT solar car team.
For you as a student, absolutely. That's exposure to industry experts, industry professionals is very important for college students and high school students. Quite honestly,
100%.
as early as we can make those connections.
Yeah, and so moving forward, we actually want to bring that back, just because that was a really good aspect of the club, because we know previous members who actually got jobs from just doing those talks and connecting with people. So moving forward, we definitely want to bring that back, because it's a very important aspect of the club.
Awesome. Do you all have anything else you want to share about your journey to implement an experiential learning program? Questions you have? Jake, do you have anything that you want to contribute?
I always have everything. I think the challenge, though, is that a lot of what I would say, which I probably won't, is from the college perspective, right? And I mean, I can think about my own personal experience at community college, and also my experience as an instructor. I found ways to incorporate experiential learning assignments into the work I do. Now, it's not in any of the pathways work as far as the same disciplines, but I think one key element, of course, is as you are doing with the work for the Centers for Workforce Innovation, is continue to engage the faculty and find ways to find those connection points in the classroom. I mean, it's so valuable, all the studies we've seen, that if students can see how the work they do in the classroom is contextualized to what they want to do in their careers, and that it has meaning, it's more than just a grade, right? It's about getting that experience, getting that foot in the door, creating that network, right? And helping to launch your career. The more engaged those students are going to be and the more motivated they're going to be to complete their degrees and their credentials. So all very important points you've all made here today, and I appreciate the opportunity to listen in.
Awesome. Anyone else before we wrap up?
I mean, I would say for me, well, first off, I'm also a college professor. I teach political science, and I incorporate a project called Community Engaged Learning, where students are actually interacting with local officials to solve a certain problem municipal. So I would say in that case, they're understanding the importance of getting involved politically in their local, in their cities, in addition to the classroom work. But, with the company Eris, they are a, small renewable energy company. And one of the projects that they installed is called the off-grid outdoor remote power unit lighting, which uses sun and wind to generate street light. So, they've been installed in schools. So the whole idea of creating that into curriculum is, well, hopefully that'll get students at least excited about renewable energy, whether they want to capitalize on the market later on, or at least become more sensitive into, however climate change work. But that's why I'm always for any type of experiential learning, because, someone who's been a job developer and career, who's been a career, I would say career advisor, I've always noticed how, students are always going to see a value in gaining that experience in addition to the class. Classroom is one part of it and it's very important, but only that it's going to be harder for them to see. Well, and it's going to be harder for them to really understand the career itself. So that's why I'm always advocate for this type of project. So
You are absolutely right. That connecting your students to politicians seems very interesting. Man, you talk about your students learning the way of the world from the policymakers, right? Some adults don't figure that out. Some never do, right? That's incredible.
How many people I have to correct in terms of how political process works. So yeah.
Right, absolutely. As the Centers of Workforce Innovation finalize their work plans for everything they're going to do for the rest of the year, we're going to be sharing them with future collaboratives, and we'll even have the collaboratives probably give very brief updates on their work. But certainly the renewable energy, the offshore wind center, which is the Renewable Energy Center, they're doing an offshore wind pathway, and they are creating high school curriculum, like 3 different type of experiments with offshore wind concepts, and for various lengths of time as career awareness or occupational area awareness. And I think you'll find that really interesting, Latoya. And everything that is being created in the centers will be shared statewide, right? Because this initiative is funded through the state. So you will have an opportunity to add those programs, those experiments to your catalog of what you're also doing. That's the great thing about this initiative, really, is, it's not about the community colleges. We happen to be kind of organizing it, but this only works if all of you all are involved. And so we're working hard to make sure you stay engaged. And so on that note, I'm going to say, before I let you go, please provide us your feedback. I'm going to tell you something. We created these breakout rooms for this month's collaboratives based on feedback from the prior month's collaboratives. People wanted to engage with one another. And so we are absolutely listening to what you all say and, making changes where we can. Certainly, if you have not already signed up for the Pathways Initiative, connect with us. connect with us on our website. Here's another QR code. Clearly, that is our thing in presentations. We just want to make it as easy as possible for you, but sign up, and that way you'll be sure to receive updates, meeting invitations, and other materials. And we just want to partner with you. And I feel like this social media is taking over our world, but certainly connect with us on social media. And thank you for joining us today. We hope that you join us for future collaborative meetings. The next Infrastructure and Energy Collaborative meeting is Wednesday, May 25th, 10 a.m. We will, and then of course we have collaborative meetings for all the other industries. But we will soon have an in-person collaborative meetup. We're thinking July, maybe August. But we just really want to get you all talking. And we think it'll be a little bit easier to do in person. Fingers crossed that nothing, gets worse about the pandemic. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all next month at one or more of our collaborative meetings.
Who would like to share some of their experiences? And I'm happy that we have Mana with us. So this is a great opportunity for you all to ask him some very specific questions that you may not have been able to ask in the main section. So who would like to share how your organization, how you have any experiential learning best practices, or have there been any roadblocks that you've encountered in implementing experiential learning? Or do you just have any experiential learning success stories or positive outcomes that you want to share with the group? You can raise your hand and then I can unmute you. Oh, come on. You're all quiet. We're going to unmute. Let's see. Sally. Okay. You should be able to unmute, Sally.
Okay.
Excellent.
All right.
Welcome for being here.
Okay. Thank you for having this meeting where you invite the public to participate. It's a way to be connected because I'm no longer in industry as a full-time employee. But when I was there and Claire, I really enjoyed Claire's presentation. Now those are best practices. But back when, I was thinking to one of the economic downturns when I was the manager of campus relations at PSEG in my professional career. And we went through an economic downturn where the internship programs were canceled, the college hire programs were canceled. But how do we continue to keep our brand alive on campus? So we did it through sponsoring like the solar car team and, the IndyCar team, at Stevens, at NJIT and Rutgers. And then we also, sponsored programs for first year and second year students, thinking, well, maybe in 2 years when they're juniors, we'll have that connection to them. And then the economic situation will turn and we could hire them as interns.
That's great to have the multiple touches like Claire mentioned.
Yeah, and employers can do this even when they're not hiring.
Right.
And it's an investment. And, employers right now are so focused on early career development, early leadership development. Being a mentor to a college student is a great way to develop your new hires, your recent hires who you want to groom into management. But, there may be a little inexperience to actually manage other employees. Put them in charge of the college kids.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much for that. Judy, I know you had your hand up. We'd love to hear from you. You should be, I'm clicking at unmute and it's not working. There we go. Whoop.
Okay.
You're
Sorry
good.
about
Okay.
that.
Sorry about that.
All right. Good
Technology,
morning,
right? Sometimes
everybody.
it's terrific and sometimes it's not so terrific.
Good to see everybody, and thank you all for this conversation. So I work with New Jersey's County Vocational Technical Schools, which provide career training as well as regular high school academics for secondary students. And experiential learning, work-based learning, structured learning experiences, whatever term we use for that, is built into all of those programs. And I'm really hopeful that some of the work that the collaboratives are doing are helping to bring more employers into a more receptive stance to that kind of activity, because I think one of the challenges is really just about engaging all types of employers in hosting students and recognizing that there is value to them and to their industry for engaging with high school students. Even though they are young, these kids are getting early career training and they need to have real world experiences. And particularly at that point that they're 16, 17, 18, that is when work-based learning can really open their eyes to all kinds of career pathways. For example, a student who thinks they want to be an engineer, if they get some early experiences, it can help them see what type of engineer they want to be. Like they thought I wanted to be an architect, and actually I'm really interested in biomedical so I think there's really a lot of value in that for employers, even though that may not be readily apparent to their immediate bottom line. And there are a lot of obstacles around perceptions of liability.
Absolutely. Yes. Agreed. And we are engaging with employers. And I think the industry realizes that it's important to get to that next generation workforce early, right? And so vocational technical partnerships with community colleges, those dual enrollment programs, I'd love to see some more experiential learning opportunities within the tie between the two of them. Mano and the solar car team, when we talked prior to this collaborative, I'd love to be able to connect that team with other schools like community colleges to help inspire them of what they can do going to a four-year school and talk about those disciplines that are involved in the team. Maybe getting some cooperation between a particular school and NJIT, like get some more involvement, and the younger you're able to go down, the more advantageous it is to the employer, right? So having that employer engagement along that continuum is very important. So thank you, Judy, for that feedback. David, I know you had your hand up, so you are ready to go.
All right. Well, excuse me. Good morning, everybody. And I'm just going to sort of build on what Judy was mentioning. Good to see you, Judy, and Sally, and everybody here. One of the things that the Department of Education, I'm out of the Office of Career Readiness that manages the CTE programs throughout the state. One of our sort of best practices with experiential learning or work-based learning SLEs is that we train all of our coordinators. So we have a requirement within our administrative code that in order for a district to provide work-based learning or experiential learning, they have to have an individual that's trained. And I think it's maybe, I don't want to say more important in secondary than post-secondary and beyond, but, child labor law really comes into play. OSHA, hazardous occupations, wage and hour, there's a lot of things, and when you're working with a minor, that you have to really consider, in whether or not they're allowed to do that. You don't want to break any rules. So, we make sure that we train our coordinators in those practices, as well as, pedagogically, like how to set up a work-based learning program. What are the quality types of things that need to be occurring in the classroom and the work site, and, how does that coordinator work with both employers, parents, the school, the student to make this a successful experience. So
absolutely, but don't confuse just work-based learning with experiential learning, right? So there are ways to structure experiential learning for those 18 and or younger than 18 that they couldn't necessarily be in that work environment, but still have that experience of real world, whatever that particular industry is. Like from a former world of mine, coming from the building trades, we would host different hands-on evenings or a field trip where they are exposed to the different trades, but they're not actually working. So you're right. When it comes to work-based learning, there are lots more parameters we need to adhere to, but there are ways of structuring experiential learning to avoid that. So thank you for that input. That is real important. Thank you. And Kyle, welcome. I see you have your hand up. There you go. Welcome, Kyle.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm with the New Jersey Builders Association, and we're statewide trade with 1,000 companies that do residential construction. And we've had a couple of our companies create partnerships with some VOTEC schools in Ocean County, Mercer County, and probably a handful of others. And I know, Judy, I've heard your name, and we've been on calls together, so we've definitely danced in similar circles. And I'd love to see if there are more members of our association that could work with more members of this collaborative to expose students young to careers in the trade. And if there are students that are in 2-year or 4-year colleges, to give them this additional skill, either to propel their career, change their career, or at least open their eyes to different options rather than the traditional education that I guess me and most of my friends were exposed to. The difficulty is getting companies that are willing to volunteer some of their time, but I know that the folks that have done it have had such a tremendous experience. We unfortunately have a ridiculous labor shortage in my world, and probably in many of your worlds. And so it doesn't start with the 25s and the 35-year-olds. It really starts very young. Expose folks into a new path, have them recognize that this is a very beneficial, lucrative career that they could build. I think there's been a negative stigma for folks who get involved in construction. It's almost like you failed at something else, and this was your fallback. And we want folks to realize this shouldn't be a fallback. This should be a very valuable opportunity, just like any other field.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with all the focus, with the federal government, with the infrastructure, bill, and the money's coming for us to fix roads and bridges, I think that shows how important, careers in construction are, because we rely on all these things to live our lives, right? And so it's not just, it's great to have the engineering feats of these magnificent bridges and things like that, but someone has to actually build them. So good point, Kyle. Thank you for that input. Anyone else want to share with us today? I know we have some other folks here. Thank you, Stephanie, for reminding me not sharing the screen allows us all to see each other. So Daryl, would you like to, I'm sorry, I don't mean to just call on folks, but even if you just want to introduce yourself, say where you're from.
No worries, no worries. My name's Daryl Lindardo. I'm the Assistant Director of Continuing Education Workforce Development at Passaic County Community College. I usually sit on the healthcare collaborative, but I was telling Stephanie earlier in a meeting that we had last week that I really wanted to sit in with everything. So she said, just come on in and do what, sit in.
Happy to have you here.
The experimental stuff right now in our college, I can say I know that I do a lot of stuff with the students are learning how to do phlebotomy and things like that for the healthcare. But back in the past, when I was going to school, I came from a high school that had an incredible industrial arts department, and I was able to do graphic design from learning how to set type in 8th grade on the old press, all the way up to high school in 12th grade when I ran a Heidelberg press. So I really think that it's really important, and I was able to do all the experimental learning, and I was very sad that years ago they took it out of that high school. And now I understand they're starting to bring some of it back, which is great, because like Kyle said, it was a stigma that people looked at, that, you're doing that because you don't have the education or the smarts to go into something else. But the truth is people didn't know what I could do and what I was doing in graphic design. They didn't have that. So it's really important. So I'm really happy to hear that it's coming back into the forefront.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Awesome.
Sure.
And I'm glad to have you here and very nice to meet you. I said that I feel like I saw a lot of new faces and names this month, so it's great to have new folks interacting. And so now I'm going to pick on, I'm assuming you like to go by Christian since you have it as F Christian.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Stephanie. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So this is a second round for me with the experiential learning with New Jersey Pathways. So you did a fabulous job last round, but even more so this round, I love hearing from everyone, right? So we're partnering with valuable partnerships and collaborations, such as with Judy, and I've been in meetings with David, and I love hearing from Kyle in terms of what he's referencing to in terms of a stigma and what people think is considered a failure in an area when in fact is not necessarily the truth. When we partner and we connect in these types of opportunities where we're able to introduce viable career pathways through either pre-apprenticeship, such as what we're doing, and then to build bridges and connectivity to registered apprenticeship, those pathways exist. So we're looking to develop that message throughout the state of New Jersey, both through the Apprenticeship Commission for educational training for New Jersey, but also in our partnerships with the colleges and universities. Because unless people are seeing it and they're communicating it at those levels, not only through the great programs that Judy has done with the CTE schools and that connectivity, but through the high schools, both in unrepresented areas and other areas, right? Not everybody's going directly to college, even though it should be an opportunity for a pathway in the future if that's where they believe they have that opportunity. But that can be done through their employer, through that built-in message. Right. So when we do that, like we're doing here, to talk about how that's being done effectively, I think that's where it comes into place. And then that connectivity further. What we're doing in that regard, and then connecting through articulation agreements throughout the state, for example, with Union County Community College, as well as Essex, and now with Rowan, that are accepting college credits for registered apprenticeship, and then develop it where they have mentoring and on-the-job learning. That's only a win-win situation for everyone, for the community, for the industry, for the state, and for that employer. And
absolutely. And what you're talking about really just exemplifies what we're doing with the New Jersey Pathways to Career Opportunities, right? First, this collaborative, bringing everybody together, building out this education ecosystem to share all these best practices and connect with one another, right? Making connections that maybe you haven't had before. And then the work of our Centers of Workforce Innovation, where you'll all be getting updates on where we're at with the centers in the coming months. But those centers are really doing the work of connecting folks from high school programs or vocational technical schools, high school dual enrollments, connecting to community colleges and the community college associate's degrees, connecting to four-year institutions, all with those articulation agreements in place so that all your learning opportunities in one way or another get evaluated for credit and build on to the next step. I personally come from the construction industry, and I really feel that that pathway model is what is going to really help change that stigma. In the state, there is a huge focus on apprenticeships. The federal government even has a huge focus on apprenticeships, and not in, the traditional trades or construction that had apprenticeships, but those non-traditional occupations being apprenticeable. I think people are paying attention to really workforce readiness, right? So I also sit on the Board of Education in my town, and, high schools, comprehensive, we're graded on how many of our kids go to college. And it's not all about going to college, right? We're preparing the workforce. So from the top down, we need to change the way people think, right? We need to change the way parents and guidance counselors look at occupations, but more importantly, like the work we're doing in this initiative with the Pathways, is showing, being very transparent of where you can start, how you can get the knowledge, the credentials, the ability to be a productive employee for the work, for your employer, but how you can build your career and move along that continuum. That it's not a matter of you become this and you stay this for the rest of your life, but this is a starting point and it can create lots of opportunities for future career growth. So I'm excited that this initiative is going to help break down those barriers. So we shall see. So thank you for that input. That was really terrific. I'm going to end with asking Mano to just talk to us a few more minutes about that solar car team, because I just think it's super exciting. And I'm really hoping to be able to connect you to some of the work that is being done in our Renewable Energy Center of Workforce Innovation. So, I always have ulterior motives, but I think it'd be beneficial for both. So Mano, please do talk to us just a little bit more, whatever it is that you would like everyone to know about the solar car team.
So with everything that's mentioned in this discussion that we had, I think an important thing that I thought about is that in a project like the solar car team, or having a solar car, building a solar car, it doesn't matter the scale of the project, like how big or how small you make it. Even high school students can make like a mini solar car, which they can showcase as it requires the same skills. So it's really interrelated in terms of you can have it at every level. Even community college students can also collaborate with NJIT. In fact, when I was in community college, I did most of my research at NJIT. So I did some undergraduate research then in my first 2 years when I was in community college. So that door is always open to intercommunicate between schools. So I think that is a very good opportunity for us and community colleges to collaborate together.
Right. Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate all of your time this morning. I am just going to wrap through a few more of these slides. So as I mentioned earlier, we really do value all of you, and especially those that are new. If you have not become an official partner, you can do so through our website. There is a spot for you to sign up and be a partner. We value your feedback. We need your feedback to continue to make these collaborative meetings relevant to you. So there's that QR code that you can scan. If you're not able to scan it or it doesn't work, like I said, the link will be sent in a follow-up email. Here is, I'm sorry, I guess we had the get involved. You can click that, will take you to, or stick your camera to that, will take you to our website. And this is the actual form that you can fill out to become involved and be considered a partner of the initiative. Again, we're on all social media channels. We look forward to engaging with you. Please do follow us, participate in conversations. When you attend the collaborative meetings, please do use that hashtag NJ Pathways. This way you can help us promote what we're doing and all of us growing through that. And then finally, our May collaborative meetings, just to announce those dates. I think we mentioned this last month, and you've noticed that we've gone from a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday format to one Wednesday each week within the month. So we will start the first week on May 4th with manufacturing and supply chain management. The second week on May 11th will be technology and innovation. The third week, May 18th, is health services. And then we'll be back with infrastructure and energy on Wednesday, May 25th. That's all for today. Again, I thank you all for your time and your participation, and I look forward to seeing you next month. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Pleasure to meet everyone.
Take care, everyone.